Everybody? We're ready to go, Lisa? Okay, all right, thank you, Lisa. Good evening, everybody. I would like to call the meeting here of the Board of Trustees for the Village of Cambridge, our meeting of October 24th, to order, please. Roll call.
Reineck.
Here.
Franklin. Whitmer.
Here.
Hollenbeck. Here. Christ.
Here.
Phelps.
Yep.
McNally.
Here. And as far as Chuck is concerned, he's,
At training today.
yep, scheduled absence, and we knew this was coming up, so. Okay, all right, if we can stand and recite the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Lisa, proof of posting.
The agenda was posted in the upper and lower levels of the Amundsen Community Center, the Cambridge Post Office, Badger Bank, and the village website.
All right, okay. We're going to go right into our public comments, but before we do that, we have an invited speaker here. And Margie, can you come up, introduce yourself?
Good evening, everyone. Margie Necker. Good to see you all this evening. This is my annual come and visit and share kind of the glad tidings of Cambridge schools. So I'll just take a couple minutes and then entertain questions. Hopefully in August, you would have received our annual newsletter. So this is our effort each summer to kind of recap what happened in the previous school year, share some of the highlights and the good things that are going on. Before I sort of launch into that, I want to express the school district's gratitude for a successful referendum. Certainly it has helped us to cast forward our operations budget, which was trailing 8 out of 10 years of no additional student aid in the state of Wisconsin. So we're pleased to say that what we're going to approve on Monday at our board meeting, if you'd like to join us, is the mill rate, which is actually lower than we anticipated when we projected the referendum costs. So we said that it would cost about $8.89 this year for our mill rate, and it's going to be $8.72. So the point is that the board works really hard with the guidance of our business office to be responsible fiscally as much as we can. So in the handout, each year there's a visual that kind of talks about who we are. I think it's a good visual snapshot. $16 million is our operating budget. We have 930 students in our 4 schools, elementary, middle, high school, and environmental charter school, Koshkonong Trails. We also have students enrolled in our virtual school as an option since COVID occurred. In the last year, we worked on approving something called a graduate profile. So all schools in the state of Wisconsin have to have at least 26 credits to graduate high school, the usual suspects, math, science, English, social studies, electives, physical education, etc. But that doesn't talk about dispositions or character of our graduates. So we wrote a graduate profile. Excuse me, if you go to any event, you're going to see that it's hung up, and it talks about the dispositions of a Cambridge high school graduate. So we had members of the business community, we had parents, we had students, we had staff go through a number of input sessions. And so what this signifies are things like work ethic, civic duty as it pertains to participating in civic functions like all of you are doing. We think that it's our job to help students be prepared to come back and give to their community when they're ready. So the graduate profile, again, is kind of the soft skills or things that people might say are the dispositions, but we want them to be really specific to our kids and how they represent our community. The last thing I want to just mention is we go out for grant funding to offset our budget expenses. So last year we had over $500,000 of grants that we were able to go out and get. So that's ranging from helping to fund our environmental charter school to funding driver's education, our new teacher induction work, so a variety of things. We did receive a school forest award from the state of Wisconsin, pretty prestigious. So at the Severson Learning Center, where Koshkonong Trails is, and at our elementary school, we have school forests. And both of them have received recognition for the quality of the forests and the way that they've been managed over time. So as I like to say, we are small, but we are mighty, and it's a point of pride for us. The Board of Education last year wrote a goal for themselves to try to be more in the advocacy space. So they went to the state legislature in the spring. They come with me to various functions to sort of talk about the school funding formula. So as we all grapple with competing resources and interests, the board wanted to be in that space to help promote, which happened, increase funding for each school district in the state this year. So, you know, it's one thing to sort of be, you know, in your hometown and be concerned about the issues that we're facing, but to step out, go and interface with legislators and try to, you know, move the dial is something I think to be admired. And so the board worked on that last year. So I'm going to pause and see if I can answer any questions. Our annual meeting was in August because we short-term borrow because we have low cash flow, which was why we needed to go out for a referendum last year. Though people know that they pay their tax bills and we get those resources and we get some funding from the state, it doesn't match up with when our bills come due. So we don't get tax payments until, you know, the end of the year, and then they lag sort of when the bills are. So that's how the flow works in the district anyhow. Questions?
So you said you got 500,000 in grants. That's commendable. Thank you. But driver's ed, isn't that funded by the students' fees?
So we have two kinds of driver's ed. We have families that sign up to do driver's ed and can afford to pay for that, and we have students who cannot pay for driver's ed because it's been private for so long. Went out and got a grant to help kids who wouldn't typically take driver's ed because we've recognized, at least in my tenure, kids aren't getting driver's license when they can't afford to get a driver's license, and they're not able to get to work and other things because of that. So working on that barrier, there is a grant in Dane County for driver's education that we were able to get for some kids, to your point, but many kids do pay the private tuition if they can for driver's ed.
All right. Paula, did you have any questions? A couple items. Number one, if you could just pass on again our congratulations to your athletic department for the men's golfing team.
Right, that was an exciting moment.
To win state tournament, and we had them here. It is
Yeah, that's cool.
quite an accomplishment. Now on to how is Cambridge coming in? In the past, there's been a ranking of all the schools in the state of Wisconsin, and I think Cambridge has been in the top third.
So there's something called a report card, and each school district is evaluated in the same metrics. So it's, you know, it's attendance, it's graduation, it's student achievement, and student growth. So we have typically been in the top third in the state. We continue to thrive and do well, but we also have students that are not making the same kind of growth, and so we're focused on those kids right now. We have a district improvement plan focusing on literacy this year, trying to fine-tune some of that. Makes a lot of sense to everybody. You know, literacy is the spine, I like to say. Like everything you study, you typically have to read something. So we're focused on that. So, you know, we're always looking to do better, but we have historically done well.
Were you in the top third this last year?
You know, I haven't seen the rankings. They come out in the middle part of November, but I would assume we're still doing well based on the test scores. We blew the top off the ACT this year. We had the highest cumulative ACT that has ever happened in Cambridge high school history. Some really smarty pants kids in that grade too, but I think that's what we're striving for, is to continue to do as well as we can.
All right, last question. COVID, did that affect you as far as any of these metrics?
I think so. I think so because learning was interrupted. And so though Cambridge did work harder to make sure we had as much in person as we could, there are still lags. And I've talked with a couple of high school graduates that were at homecoming, and they both told me that they were struggling at UW in their math classes, and they thought it was because that they had interruptions during their sophomore years, and you know, that there's just gaps, right? And so it's hard to measure where those, it's like Swiss cheese, like where are the holes? But I think that there's, you know, everyone was in the same circumstances, so it's not necessarily like the Deerfield's doing better than we are or anything like that. It's just the learning gaps are unknown still, where the gaps were.
Okay. All right. Anybody else? Chris?
With the passing of the referendum, were you able to hire any more staff?
No. We were going to have to eliminate 15 employees if we couldn't pass the referendum. It was really just maintaining
Okay.
what we had at the time. And we're still, grappling in a couple areas, and it's not typical in a district this size, but like our elementary principal is also the director of instruction. Our middle school principal is our director of special education. Different districts our size would have discrete people in those roles. Cambridge has always chosen to have fewer administrators and more classroom teachers. That's where the focus is. And so I would just say that our focus has been on kids, as forward-facing with kids as we can. So we didn't have to eliminate anybody, and it would have been super drastic had we not passed the referendum.
All right, thank you.
One last question, promise. Blue Jay,
Promise?
yes.
Just kidding.
Blue Jay Way, how's that working out for you? Is that all?
It's nice to have it paved. It's lovely to have it paved. So,
Okay.
I think it's a good, safe place because there's a pedestrian lane now on it as well. I think that creates a little extra foot traffic space. And so, though that came together in a way that we did not expect, it came together. So we're grateful to have that in place, and I think it does improve safety for kids.
Okay.
So I have one last question. Sorry.
Go right on ahead here. Kim.
I know you come once a year to give us a summation of what happened last year. You're always welcome to come midway through the current school year to tell us how things are going to kind of brief us at what might be coming up
Sure.
that we need to look at. So
certainly-
I would
Okay.
appreciate that.
All
I
right.
don't know about anybody else, but I think it would be kind of cool.
I like it. I mean, I've been at all the municipality meetings. I was able to actually get to Rockdale last week because our board meeting got changed this month, so it works for me. This is a night that we don't have a district meeting on this evening, so it's great. I like to be welcome, and vice versa. It's like interesting always to kind of hear what the business is of the village, and I follow that all the time, but nice to be here, so good to see everybody.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Margie. Going back to public comment, is there anybody here that would like to speak about something? Okay. Seeing nobody else, we'll close that portion. Moving on, approval of the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
All right.
Second.
All right, anybody have any notes? I have one. On the board minutes for the last meeting, I'm pretty sure I called the meeting
Yeah.
at 6:30. Yeah,
Okay.
all right. And that is it. The only comment. All right, anybody else have anything? All those in favor of approval of the consent agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carries. All right, we'll get into reports. I've got a couple things here. Met with the business development group it was October 11th. And they were talking about a number of things, but on the plate was they're getting ready for Cambridge Christmas. And there's already, there's some Facebook posts. I didn't sign yet. There is the cookie walk that they're going to be doing again, the Santa Claus visit, elf shelf, which I understand is in here. I've seen it. Horse-drawn carriages, the little candle bags up and down, the garland lights, and then lastly, the Lions Club is going to be offering their ongoing support for, I don't know, carolers and what have you. So that's all scheduled, so that looks to be well underway. They're planning that event. And then number two, yesterday I had a phone call and I was able to actually talk with Carly, and it's on our audit. And there were some questions of me, and if I was aware of any fraud. I'm not. I know we had a small item, and it was so small I don't think it would hit the materiality. I didn't spend a whole lot of time on that. Lisa had shared the details anyway with the auditor, Carly. And then I asked about the due date, and they are still out. It's going to be a couple of weeks yet. So they got a little behind because of all the cash work that they had to do at the beginning of the year when we had a little transition here before Tammy showed up. So that's it. They're in good shape as far as I know. So those are the two items that I wanted to talk about. Anything? Okay, moving on. Library report.
The Cambridge Christmas, the library will also be doing something that event. So if you're coming to the Elf on a Shelf, we'd encourage you to stop into the library as well. They're going to be having, and I think it's some hands-on something or other that we're going to be building at the library. I believe we're going to be building ornaments, I think, is what the library is going to have available. And that would be for children and adults, so anyone can pop on over there. The Friends of the Library Arts and Crafts Sale is going to be the first Saturday in November. So that's a big thing for our Friends of the Library that are working on there. The 45th anniversary, we are going to be having to celebrate or to end the 45th year of the library in January. We will be hosting the Cambridge Community Dinner. Again, with vegetarian option will be available that day as well. So encourage people, if you haven't gone before, to come. And then most of the rest of the meeting, we talked about one other thing, the phone and the copier. We're looking at getting a new copier. Our copier is 13 years old, and it is so old that it's getting expensive to maintain it because parts and ink and such are no longer there. So we're our lease, I believe, with them is up in the end of November. So we're talking to someone about getting a new copier, and we're also looking at perhaps changing out the phones as well with copier and phone. And I think Samantha has talked to you, Lisa, about if...
Yep, because we need new copier. Ours is older.
Oh, even older, all right, all right. And then we talked about budget, and we got our budget numbers then to Tammy so that you had those for the budget. And that's about it.
Elf on a Shelf, I heard this, but I'm not sure what that is. Is that the big one here where you go through?
That's in here. It's for kids to come in and purchase gifts for family and so forth at very minimal prices.
Okay.
It used to be done by the Girl Scouts.
Right.
They no longer do it. A private family buys everything throughout the year. They set it up, they run it.
All right. So it's
that's
just
very-
for kids to buy stuff for, it's not
They
for
do have
adults.
crafts for the kids to do. Friday night, there's usually magician or,
Yeah.
so activities along with it, but.
All right. Okay. I just couldn't remember.
Question for Paula. If we're leasing the copier, is the maintenance agreement in that lease? Only because I'm listening to what you say, and I know when we lease something that the repair costs are in that lease that we have.
Unfortunately, the lease is really old, and so the all-inclusive things you think would be included in a lease
We're not.
aren't necessarily included in that one. Yeah,
Okay.
but the new ones that we're talking to, we're going to be much more on top of that.
Building.
We actually anticipate being able to save money going with a new copier and with a new phone system, simply because of what we have now and being able to downsize better things and have much better service.
Okay.
How old is that copier?
13 years.
And the Villages is,
Ours has to be 17, 18 years.
okay.
Because
All right.
when we do it at hot clubs,
We'll be talking about that, I'm sure, with
Yep,
audit
we'll talk about
finance.
that Thursday.
Yeah, okay. All right, anything else for Paula? All right, thank you, Paula. We'll move on. Village office updates. Lisa?
Todd
Wait,
first.
wait, you've got
you
Todd.
forgot Todd.
Oh,
Yep, Todd.
I am sorry. I struck it. I can't believe it. Todd, I am sorry.
You can just bypass it.
No. His reports are good. Come on up, Todd. I hope they're good.
Here, I was gonna skip out tonight.
Yeah, okay.
Evening, Todd, Director of the Village of Cambridge for Public Works. We have signs going up on Cletus in the new neighborhood over here. Oh geez, where am I at here? Come on, I talked to the Lions Club, and we talked about the lights for going up in Veterans Park. She's got a date in mind, so she's gonna tell me, when she wants to get going on that. And then, I talked with the flower shop to make sure that my order is gonna be there. And, I did talk to the DNR. The DNR is, working with us about the river. Because some of those trees are in the floodplain. And they're talking that they might want to move them. But we're working with Jefferson County Drainage District and the DNR and everything, because the Drainage Districts has their rules and the DNR has their rules, and so they're fighting and fussing and fighting on what to do, because we were told one thing and the DNR is telling them another thing.
So does that mean more trees are going to have to come down?
No, that means that we're gonna have to, we possibly might have to move some of those trees off the floodplain.
That were taken down in our.
That were
That were
taken
taken
down,
out,
I'm
and you
sorry.
just left them?
Yeah,
And there
they just
wasn't a
left them
plan
there.
to remove them?
Those
Okay, got
massive
it.
monster,
Yep, those really
things.
big ones, and now we
Yes.
might have to remove them. Got it.
Is there a plan with Camrock Park in the creek in that area?
what's that?
When you go to the Camrock Park, it looks totally different.
Camrock
Well,
Park has nothing to do
But are
with,
they gonna do anything with that if they're making us?
I'm not sure that's Dane County. This was Jefferson County, and they asked us to do this. This is what they told us to do. So that's something that we'll have to work with the DNR, and they're not really sure that we're gonna have to do anything either. They're just,
It's pretty stark difference.
they weren't aware, so now they're aware, and now,
Right.
so now they're going at that. The tiles that were down here at the plow are all categorized, filed, and we're gonna store them on a shelf. So if anybody's looking for a tile, we have all the names of these tiles, because I believe that, didn't you put a notice out on those? Well, we still have them, and people aren't happy about it. So we're gonna categorize them, and we already got the category, we already got their names, all the names off the tiles, and we're gonna put them in a nice place, so they're not getting roughed up and stuff. So if anybody's looking for their tile, if people out there are looking for their tile, to let me know, and I'll see if we have it for them. I was supposed to meet with Bill today to finish off my LRIP, and we're doing it tomorrow morning, so I can hit the send button as soon as I just want him to go through it and make sure that I did it right, so we can get something. And that's about it.
Going back to item 1 on your list, you mentioned Veterans Park and the Lions Club and the lights.
Yeah, we put up lights up there. They decorate the Christmas tree, and then
Right.
we string lights for them right across the street from the bank, right?
Okay.
Because we were going up the flagpole, but not that flagpole.
Okay, all right. And the rest of the underground wiring, that's all done?
It's all done.
Everything is?
It's done. The grass is growing over top of it.
Okay.
It's
All right.
ready to go.
And that was a Cambridge Foundation, right, on that
Yep.
one? And they,
Yeah, we have to thank for that.
right,
We even
Got a
added
bill.
an extra set of plugins over by the monument, in case somebody ever wanted to do something at the monument.
okay.
I figured if they were going through there, it was probably a good idea to put one there.
All right, okay. And then you'll start, what, leaf removal and?
They
another
kind of
week?
were already playing around with that, but there's really not a lot out there. We don't want to, you don't want to go out there for a couple hours. You want to go out there for a day. You want to, and after all this wind,
There'll
it's
be a
going to be
lot.
time.
In 2 weeks, there's going to be a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Well, they've already been out vacuuming,
All right,
Good.
so
And the notice will be in the paper next week, giving the timelines. when
October
we'll-
24th, I thought you said.
November 24th.
Or that's the end.
Actually, 24th is the Friday after Thanksgiving, so the Wednesday before. Yep. So that will be going to the paper.
Yep.
But then we would also encourage people to mow their
Yes,
leaves into
absolutely.
their,
That
because
is in the press release.
it's
that
actually
will
much
be-
better for your lawns to let the leaves decompose.
That's
and-
fertilizer.
Yep, give you, it's much better, so,
That is part of the press release.
perfect.
okay. Anything further?
Same
for-
as it was last year.
Anything for Todd? Any other questions? Todd, thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you. Thanks for remembering me.
Nice notebook that you have there, too, with all of your comments on it.
I wrote that one down real quick.
Uh-huh, okay.
All right, have a good night.
All right, good night. All right, now can we go to Lisa Moen here, our village administrator?
Obviously, a lot of Tammy and my time, more so Tammy's, has been working on the budget. We are still working with the auditors. We keep thinking we're done and we keep getting more requests for information. Like Mark said, they did do some phone calls today on process procedures with Mark, Tammy, and myself. We have been working with others. We have set up now for the investment of the funds from the loan. So that is up and running now. Tammy attended some workhorse training last week, so she's been great working on the system, but to go for the training, to be able to get the hands-on. So that was a one-day training last week. A lot of ongoing projects still. The Westgate finalizing financial surety, which we will be talking about later. We've been getting a lot of questions about from constituents what's going on out there, so fielding those. Quick Trip, we did receive their plans today, site plans, so that will be on Plan Commission in November. Scott Farms, the well number 3 rate increases, getting together stuff, information for Ellers. Brian will be doing a presentation here. Dancing Goat Samplers, some water and sewer stuff, Fire Commission. Jane has been working with us, getting the transfer of the land for that one parcel that will be going to the Vineyards subdivision. Been working on the quitclaim deed.
What land
for that.
transfer?
Hmm?
What land transfer? For the vineyard?
It's part of the developer's agreement. Once they paid their portion in for the purchase of all the land, there was one parcel left. Comes from the end of the road where the apartments are, and kind of as an elbow that comes up.
Going west?
Yes.
At the
and it-
first intersection, go west?
Yes. So where that road ends,
Yeah.
continues forward, and it does an elbow up along Highway 1218. In the developer's agreement, it was.
Oh, is that the place that Bill Ranget said he
Wants
might want to
to
put
do more
another apartment
apartments.
building?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's part of the developer's agreement, so we're getting that ready. We have been researching websites and new copiers. Have been working with Samantha. She'll share with us, seeing if we can do both copiers together, looking for better deals and so forth. We'll talk about that more at Audit and Finance. Comprehensive plan, all the notices to neighboring jurisdictions, the county is the state and so forth, who meets the notifications. That will be for the village board at our next meeting. The final draft they were working on, we just got that, posted it on our website. As Todd said, we've been working DNR on the cleanup of the river. The tiles, we did have received a couple requests recently about the tiles. We just received a letter that came in after this, so it wasn't included in correspondence. I'll be responding to them, sending you both the letter that the board received as well as the response. Will be coming up. Probably missing stuff, but that's a recap.
Okay, questions for Lisa?
Anything from the hiring process for a new police officer?
Yes, thank you. We did do the interviews. The top two candidates were virtually a dead tie. But I do believe the offer has been given to the one officer. I haven't heard back from Lieutenant Triggs if they have accepted. I'm assuming they have. But I will double check with Lieutenant Triggs. They will have to go through road training still. So that
Are you
will-
allowed to say a name? Are you allowed to say a name?
I don't want to because I don't know if it's been accepted or not by the person. So,
Understandable.
yeah. So Lieutenant Triggs had asked, please keep it confidential until it's verified. So I'm assuming they accepted, but I have not heard. But both the candidates that were at the top would need to go through road training, so it will be into the new year before they're actually here on patrol.
Lisa, we're going to be seeing a whole lot of little hobgoblins and witches and all that. What day is that?
The board approved
Tuesday.
October 31st,
Okay.
from 5:30 to 7:30.
5:30, 7:30. Okay, I just,
Lisa, can I just interject? Just so you know, though, Thursday night, somebody downtown coordinated a Halloween parade from 5 to 7 through the downtown district this Thursday
okay.
to go up and down Main Street because a lot of the business owners are open on Thursdays.
Yeah.
So,
All right.
just an FYI.
Okay, thank you, Jana. And then, so they can go this Thursday, or they can go on the 31st?
And that Thursday is just for the businesses, not
Yeah,
homes.
okay. All right, so we'll see our little friends once again. All right, well, thank you, Lisa. Let's move to item 7, Treasurer's Report, and then bills and any possible action, follow-up. All right, Tammy, what have you got?
We had the first run of bills was $26,720.22. The second run was $16,045.92 for a total of $42,766.14. There were 2 bills on the list that you saw that were over $5,000. One was for the Village of Deerfield for police wages, $15,546.30. And then MSA professional services for $5,255.52.
Okay. Want to make a motion here on bills before we get to discussion?
I'll make a motion to pay the bills in set amount, because I didn't write it down.
Okay.
Second.
All right, got a motion, a second. All right, questions? I have 2. I noticed that we're making a payment of $3,500 for the Bobcat program. I'm glad you're still here, Todd. What is this one about?
It's a trade-in program that we participate in. The Bobcat, it has been a little behind in the trade-ins on their part, not on ours, but we're supposed to trade it in every year and get a new one in its place.
Okay,
So they've been behind in their supply, so we've had the one we have for 3 years and just got the new one, so.
so we got a new one, and then we had to pay this.
Yeah, when I first started working here, it was supposed to be traded in then,
Yeah,
Yeah.
so they just got it.
It's a program, instead of purchasing one and keeping it, you pay $3,500 every year and get a new one every year.
Okay, is there a limit on hours with that then, Todd?
300 hours.
Okay, and how are you doing on hours? I mean, just roughly?
Just got it.
I know, but.
And it was waived because they were behind 2 years,
Yeah,
so
we didn't
the
get
mileage.
charged- We didn't get charged for any of those hours that were over for
Yeah.
that. It was probably, I don't know, it was like 600 total hours or something like that on it, maybe even a little bit more than that, but there was no charge because that was their error.
Okay.
So do we have a maintenance contract with this $3,500 that we pay? Are we responsible for all the repairs?
I do not believe so,
So when it breaks down, who pays for it then?
except for the tires.
Tires are,
We're
We,
responsible for the tires.
we pay
tires,
for the
oil
tires.
change, yes, I get that. But anything else?
Anything major, that would be up to them. It's a lease, basically.
Okay.
Okay, my second question is on the second run of bills. And I noticed that there is a payment for $200 for the restroom rental out at the fish ponds. Is that the net, or are we still collecting one half of that from the Lions Club, and have we billed them?
We have not billed it, we just received it, but usually, yes, we do bill the Lions Club and they help pay for
Okay.
that.
All right.
Is that per season or per month?
See.
I'd have to look at
think
the
it's once a year.
invoice. I believe it's an annual, or seasonal.
$200, that's
It's not out there year-round, it's a seasonal. They do take it out.
Okay. All right, so you're going to look into that, and we'll invoice them if we
Yeah.
need to. Okay. All righty, any other questions on bills? All right, I'll ask for a roll call, please.
Franklin Whitmer.
Yes.
Hollenbeck.
Yes.
Chris.
Yes.
Phelps.
Yep.
Reinig.
Yes.
McNally.
Yes. All right, thank you. Going on to item 8.
Did you have anything else, Tim?
Oh, I'm
Or-
sorry. Yes, Tammy.
No, just what Lisa had said, working diligently on the budget, working with Ellers, waiting to hear back from him, so make sure all of our revenue amounts are correct and in the right spots.
All right.
So how are we doing on this year's budget spending? Are we on budget, over budget, under?
We're on track for the budget. Yeah, I'd have to look at the budget comparison for exact, but
We're not over.
we're not over. We're under.
All righty. Anything else? Okay. Let's go on to item 8A, the developers agreement amendment. Is this going to be Lisa or is this Jane?
With item 8A. So this is an item that we put on the agenda on Friday, hoping that we wouldn't have to discuss it at tonight's meeting. But where we're at right now, you'll recall, or maybe you won't recall because this is in the minutia of the developers agreement. One of the things that we required was a financial security instrument. In addition to the MRO, the municipal revenue obligation that we would pay to the developer, there's a financial security that protects the village against the risk that the developer would walk away mid-project. And so the requirements that we put in the developer's agreement were that it be for 120%. We just used our standard language that we use at Stafford for development agreements generally for these, the standard requirement, 120% of the project costs, and that a condition that it couldn't be reduced without the consent of the village. And it was to be provided to the village before construction on the project began. So I've been on the phone with Westgate Partners about every day for the last 3 weeks, or their attorney, trying to get this letter of credit to the village. And they've been trying to come up with some creative solutions. They had a misunderstanding with Quick Trip in how the collateral funds between those were going to be used. They thought they were going to have funds from the Quick Trip closing to to offer for this line, for this letter of credit. That ended up not being true, so now Quick Trip's attorney isn't participating in these conversations. Anyway, so as of today, we were really hoping, we didn't put anything in your packet because we were really hoping we would have a signed copy, signed by the bank, of a document that meets these requirements. I think we're close, but because we don't actually have it signed by the bank yet, we wanted to keep this opportunity to have you all weigh in on what we should do if it's not signed and presented to us. Things have been developing quickly, and it was just on Friday that we got the bare bones proposal. I had a couple of additions to make it fit within the developer's agreement, and so as of yesterday morning, Westgate Partners attorney said, okay, I'm going to work to get the bank's signature on this so that you can be assured you don't even have to discuss it with your board because we don't have to amend the developer's agreement. And I said, okay, I need it by close of business today to be signed by the bank. Otherwise, we're going to have to figure out, since the board is having a meeting, what we should do in the event that it's not signed. As of 4:59 today, it was not signed. I got a call from Luke and Todd who said, Boardman Clark is the one who's advising, is the law firm who's advising the bank. They have to do a conflicts of interest check that's taking a long time because Mike Hurl had his will done by Boardman Clark. So anyway, so that's the explanation for why there's this most recent delay, why we couldn't have the signature as of tonight. But this is something that's been, I understand there's a reason for the things that have caused the delay, but the fact remains that we, as of tonight, don't have a document signed by the bank that meets the financial security requirements that we have in the developer's agreement. So I wanted to put it to the village board to just weigh the risk, because I think that's a policy decision for you to make as much as for me to make. I'm still hopeful that as of tomorrow we will have a signed agreement, and you won't have no decision that you make tonight will have to come to fruition at all. But I wanted to take your temperature on if we don't end up with a signed agreement as this project goes on. Right now we're about halfway through what's a very short project, and so I mean there's pros and cons, policy pros and cons either way for the village to consider. I mean, if we would just, shut down the project and say no more work until you produce some sort of letter of credit that satisfies the developer's agreement, that's definitely our prerogative. That's fair. That's clearly in the development agreement. The downside to the village is that every day that we delay the project, the less of the construction that's going to happen. So it's really a balancing act, and I just would like your feedback, your direction on how to manage that balance, how to strike that balance if, as of tomorrow, if as of the end of the week, we still don't have this letter of credit.
Is it in your professional opinion that we will get the signature from the bank?
I mean, it was a plausible explanation that I heard. The conflicts of interest check definitely can take a few days for our, especially if somebody has to check with somebody to see if the file was closed. It is true that Boardman would have to make sure that they're not, that they don't have a conflict. But it is also true that there have been delays, and so I would be very uncomfortable, not taking your temperature tonight and going another 2 weeks without some sort of letter of credit, unless that was your direction. There's, on the other hand, there is the MRO that the village will pay at the end, so we have some security from that. We won't pay, we won't pay funds that we don't have. So it could be that's satisfactory to you. And by the way, I wanted to mention too that my presence here at this meeting is entirely TID 6 related and is part of those administrative costs, and all of the phone calls that I've been making. Stafford bills, I bill those things to TID 6 as opposed to the general Cambridge municipal account. So these are all of these costs that I'm incurring are part of those administrative costs. So there's that. It's $1,370,000 is the projected MRO that the village would pay Todd up to that at the end. Sorry, Westgate Partners. So if you feel satisfied that that is enough to protect the village interests, the ability to draw out those funds, then that's good information. If you would like me to, if you would like the village to stop the project at a certain point, if we don't have the letter of credit, that's an option, weighing against the benefit and the cons of delaying the project into the winter.
But they've had ample time to get this information and signed.
So, I mean, certainly
or
it has
yes.
always been in the development agreement,
Okay.
and yeah,
So
that's.
When was
it sounds
due?
stonewalling.
It was supposed to be presented to the village before they started the project. And then that's when it was in their discussions with Quick Trip, they realized, oh, they had a misunderstanding about how the escrow account was gonna work with the Quick Trip closing. They had always intended on using those dollars, but those dollars aren't gonna go to Westgate Partner until after the project is complete by design. And so there's no way to get our hands on those escrow dollars from Quick Trip until the project is complete.
So the agreement's with the developer, not with Quick.
Our
Yes.
agreement is with the developer and not with Quick Trip. Quick Trip has been involved in the discussions now to try to facilitate some way that this could happen, but we haven't found a really good way that protects Quick Trip interests and protects the village interests, because we both want that same, our hands and control over that same pot of money.
I talked with Lisa about this last week, I think it was, and I'm inclined to, to tell Todd he's got to get this to us for two reasons. I mean, one, it is a big project. We do need to have some evidence of, assurance that if there is a problem, that we are covered, and as what we would do with any developer. And that kind of gets to reason number two. If we make an exception here, are we opening up the door then for any other future developments where we say, well, okay, we're supposed to have this financial security agreement, but, don't worry about it. And I just don't think that's right for the village. So I don't like playing hardball, but if he isn't prepared to give us this document by the end of the week, he's got no choice, but, the project gets, there's a stop work order on it.
So how did we get to this point that they're already working on it and we never got the agreement?
We haven't stopped. I mean, we could have stopped, we could have halted progress now, and we just haven't made the call to do so, because we keep thinking we're getting very close.
So this has been work for a while, then it isn't just the last 2 days.
About 3 weeks, yeah.
So this agreement's been worked on for 3 weeks. and we're
Started
still-
where it was just moving dirt and so forth, and so it was like, we need it before you start digging in the ground, and that's when we'll have it soon, and
Yeah,
Right.
you're talking about the project, the coming
Well, I
up with
heard you
this
say we
agreement,
needed-
right?
This agreement was supposed to be done before the project started.
it was
Yeah.
The
dated
project's
back in
been started. My
March.
question is why, I guess my question is, why didn't we get it before the project started, and where did the
Yeah.
ball get dropped?
Yeah, and we when we asked for it before the project started, we kept being told that it was coming by the end of the week, and then by the end of next week. And
So
then,
again, my
that's where
statement stands as they're stonewalling us.
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing too. That's why I asked my question. Was this something we just brought
So
up?
if it's not here by, in my opinion, if it's not here by Thursday, 5 PM, they stop the project until we get it.
I'd be inclined to go to like Friday noon.
You little stinker.
I am. It's that end of the day thing just never works well for me, that 5 o'clock thing.
I get you.
So,
Okay.
so I'm much more inclined to a
But you're
noon
going a whole day. We could have went noon on
deadline.
Thursday.
No.
All right.
I'm okay with to the end of the week, yeah.
Any other questions, Bill? Eric?
I,
Chris? Does anybody want to make a motion?
I will agree with Paula's statement. I will make a motion to Friday at noon if we don't have their money, or our money, their, what do you call it?
Signed agreement.
The signed agreement,
An acceptable sign.
yes, acceptable signed agreement, that they have to halt until we get it.
Thank you.
So,
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right. Discussion?
so I'm reluctant to stop.
If-
I'm reluctant to stop what they're doing, to asking them to stop work. But on the other hand,
I mean, how big is
It's-
this developer?
on the other hand, it's the precedence of, are we being a pushover by letting him not abide by our agreement, which this village has been burned by that. For the entirety of the time I have known about any of these agreements that we've done. For my entire tenure on any of the boards that I've been on. And so I guess, so that's what I'm personally weighing.
Me too. I've been
Okay.
weighing that for the last few weeks, how to balance those things.
If we don't make a stand, it's gonna continue to happen. So, if we don't have it, then you just say, well, no, I don't see it anymore. I think we as a village shouldn't let that happen. We don't need to be bulldozed by a developer. We need to stand forward, stand fast with the rules put forth.
Chris, you have any input here?
I'm reluctant to stop a development that's already in full swing, because we are getting into the winter months. But I think the precedence speaks for itself. So, I mean, this could all be a moot point if tomorrow they have it signed and we get the email from you saying, all right, we have what we need. But I think the village has to put a line in the sand, and this is where it is. So, it's my opinion.
Okay. Eric?
Chris, same.
All right.
How big is the developer? I don't know the developer.
How big is a developer?
I mean,
You mean the
multi-billion
company,
dollar
Westgate?
business, or are they, what?
The project itself
No, I'm
is-
developer, how deep are their pockets?
Oh,
In the proposed agreement, they had put some in, their own money, that I think 450,000, in addition to what the bank was putting in on its line of credit. Yes, it was 450,000.
What's the relevance?
Well, I think if it's a small developer, the risk, I mean, the reason the agreement is to make sure the project gets done and the village isn't left holding the board. Relevance is if it's a small fly-by-night developer, the chances of getting stuck are much greater than if it's a multi-billion-dollar developer that's financially stable. That's the relevance. I don't know anything about the developer.
He has made the comment in the past that this particular parcel he's wanted to finish for a long time
Yeah.
now, so he is motivated to get it done. So I think it's in his best interest, and I think he's going to follow through on it.
I think so, too.
I think so. I think it is in his best interest, and I do think, I mean, I have sensed a lot of stress in his voice, a lot of urgency in his phone calls when really, I do think he is in good faith trying to get this done.
But it's been months.
He has vested interest in other property in Cambridge as well.
I think it's been, to your point, since the beginning of the project, about 3 weeks ago when we asked for the letter of credit, when he realized that the money that he was counting on from Quick Trip wasn't coming through in the same fashion that he had anticipated. So, yeah, I mean, it has definitely been months since he signed the developer's agreement, but I think he became stressed about it about 3 weeks ago.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Before I call the matter to vote, can you repeat the motion here, Lisa?
To receive this signed acceptable agreement by noon on Friday, or the project will be halted until we receive that signed document.
Do you know, is the issue the valuation of how much, I think it was 130%? Is it,
Here's what
can
it,
they get to 100%? Is that an option?
no, oh, are you saying, is it an option to just lower the
Yeah,
valuation?
I mean, is it the valuation hurdle he's having a
Oh,
problem with?
no. So here's what it was. To get a traditional letter of credit was gonna cost him $80,000, which Joe DeYoung thought was probably reasonable for a letter of credit for that amount for 12 months. So he was asking the bank to do a line of credit collateral agreement so that the bank would just stand behind what they were loaning for the project. So the amount is fine. The amount is, it's just a matter of, I've talked to the bank over and over on the phone. The president of the bank is fine with it. They just can't get the counsel from Boardman to sign off on it until Boardman does their conflicts check, is my understanding of the present situation.
Okay, all those in favor of having Jane craft a response and having this sent out immediately, calling for cessation by noon on Friday if we don't get this taken care of, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, it passes
Thank you for
unanimously.
your direction.
All right, thank you, Jane. Okay, next item up is the presentation from Ellers, long-range cash flow analysis. You can come up, sir, and introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. Brian Raymer from Ellers. For you have, I will present in the packets. So ultimately, this is more or less an update on the Well 3 project. From a financing perspective, we have a couple of decision points upcoming that I requested this meeting so that we could review them and make sure you're kind of kept apprised of those decision points so that if discussion is needed, we can have it. So going to that, the first slide just simply asks the question why we're here, and ultimately those decision points is, if you recall from our conversations in spring and even into last winter, there is an $800,000 ineligible portion of the Well 3 project. What I mean by ineligible is it's not fundable through the Clean Water Fund loan. So last January, I think maybe even last December, I came to speak to the various funding options, and even though there's an ineligible portion, it still made financial sense due to the subsidized interest rate that you will receive through the Safe Drinking Water Fund loan program to move forward with that program. However, now, you know, we got to figure out the ineligible portion. So that's one decision item that we'll speak to. And then the other item is we have the opportunity to break up the water rate adjustment necessary in order to close on both of these loans, meaning you're going to need to prove to whomever is underwriting the loan, in this case it's going to be the state and someone else, but you need to prove to them that you have the revenues in place in order to service the debt. And as revenue bonds, it comes with not only, you know, a 1-to-1 ratio of revenues left over after expenses to pay your debt, but it's actually a 110 or 125 ratio. So you need to prove that you have kind of the cash flow to repay the debt. So we've kind of gone through the cash flow to show what that projected rate adjustment will be previously. I've repeated the slides from that presentation in the majority of this packet, but I just kind of wanted to provide, you know, the decision point on breaking up the increase as well. And what I mean by that is you're regulated by the Public Service Commission for water rates. So you can only jump through your certain windows of opportunity that you're afforded to increase rates. And right now, you're eligible for one of those windows of opportunity that would provide for kind of an inflationary adjustment to help kind of break up that total needed adjustment. So those are the two items. We will jump into the ineligible portion first on the next slide. And looking at that, you would need to, we're looking at issuing as water revenue bonds. If you remember from our previous presentations, you know, you could issue this as geo debt. However, that would eat into your allowable geo debt capacity. So we've talked about issuing the ineligible portion as revenue bonds, just the same as the, you know, total project costs going to the state. So this $800,000 we could issue kind of as a competitive sale or a negotiated sale. You have several options, you know, always in terms of financing and where you go to seek financing. When it comes to these lower dollar amounts, it starts to become kind of more work because you want to make sure that you're realizing some efficiencies and costs of issuance. So with that, I just kind of provided quickly some comparisons. Again, just trying not to get too tables and numbers friendly for you, but kind of a competitive sale that comes with a higher cost of issuance. That's what I mean by COI, in order to develop the marketing materials. You guys haven't issued geo bonds or been to the market recently, but for those that were involved with the last one, just understand we have to develop what's called an official statement on your behalf. So that requires additional costs from our end, as well as there's disclosure requirements, ongoing items as it relates to a competitive sale. So kind of looking at a recent AA rated revenue bond, which this would be non-rated, the all-in costs were about 5% on that issuance. This was, again, the one thing that I do think is misleading about this sale as well is it was for about $4 million and only amortized over 12 years. Here we're talking about $800,000, and it would be our recommendation to kind of try to stretch this so you don't have to have a higher rate increase. So that, I think the 5%, not to mention the market has moved up about 15 basis points since September. So in truth, probably right now, AA rating, same sale would probably get 5.25, you know, just under 5.25. Negotiated sale, we've spoken to the underwriter on the village's behalf after talking with staff just to get a quote from someone who can issue revenue bonds greater than 10 years. Typically your local banks can only issue for 10 years. So again, in the effort to try to stretch out the debt service payments in order to, one, match the asset service life, but keep that rate increase down, we did ask for a quote from the underwriter from your revenue bond anticipation note, and for 20 years they quoted 5.41%. And in truth, the only costs to that would be our involvement and your bond counsel's involvement, but our involvement would be reduced, wherein on a competitive sale we're likely charging somewhere $26,000, where here we're probably charging $15,000, so there can be a significant cost savings. And then the bond attorney fees are pretty much the same either way, and this firm typically does no closing fees. So again, our involvement would be to develop a similar financial document for the underwriter, as well as negotiate the rate at the day of sale as well. You know, we don't just kind of move forward and say, okay, this is your rate, because you're typically waiting for your approvals and things like that. So just understand that we would be there on your behalf negotiating this transaction. So while I think it's close, ultimately I do think kind of the negotiated should be something that's continued to be explored, only due to kind of the cost of issuance approach and trying to reduce those costs of issuance for the water utility. So I'll kind of pause there and see if there's any questions on the two types that we've kind of talked about.
Brian, I have a question. I mean, current market conditions are going to push the first one here, the competitive, up to 5.25. on the second one, it's at 5.41. Is there anything that's there because of market conditions that would put pressure on that to see an increase?
Yeah, so what they'll do is they'll lock in kind of the top value of that rate for 60 days, and then we can negotiate down on sale day if the rates have moved down, but that's kind of your top end rate. So the answer is simply no, but that's kind of the explanation of why I'd say no. It could only go down if you're willing to say, yeah, we'll take in the locked in rate and then kind of go from there.
Is the competitive a 20-year as well?
Yep. Yep.
So both of them would be 20-year data.
Yep. And then if anybody's interest, like the state trust fund loan program is at 6 3/4 right now, so I didn't even put that down. Not to mention that's their GO rate on a revenue rate. They say it's GO plus whatever we feel is necessary. So you don't know until closing there, but it's typically about full percent to 2% higher than their GO rate. So you could expect a pretty significant interest rate there from another option. Again, you could talk to your local banks as well. They typically will not be issuing 20-year debt due to their own regional restrictions in terms of how they can act as an underwriter versus a commercial loan. So you're operating as a tax-exempt entity here, which would offer you a lower interest rate than a commercial loan. So that's kind of the reason too, but you could always ask. I've seen some local banks that for some reason have the ability to issue 20-year debt, so doesn't hurt to ask, of course, but we just kind of wanted to provide a quote. It's the same kind of process though in terms of it's truly negotiated, just a matter of who you're working with.
What's the expected life of the well?
The engineer ran a design life calculation as required by the state program, and it came out to greater than 30 years, and that's based on an average cost by asset category. So that's on the total cost. Of course, there's some components that'll be less, some that are more. Yep.
So is a longer term possible, or is 20 the max?
For the state, we're able to do 30 years, and that's what we've been kind of running with. But for this, I would imagine they would quote a higher rate because it's just not typically done, with an underwriter longer than 20.
Do you recall what the 800,000 for the ineligible portion, what that was?
Yeah, I do, because it was a learning experience for me. It's all about the softening equipment at the well, and the state statute just doesn't have that listed in their eligible costs basically right now, because it could be the prerogative to enforce softening at each individual water connection instead of source wide. So that's the reason the DNR gave us, but essentially it's the softening equipment.
Okay. All right.
So why did we choose to do softening equipment?
We're already doing it. It's over on well 2.
Pipe longevity.
It's pretty rough to go ahead and put a new well in, and people on the other side of town, they don't get water that's been
Right.
softened. And yet,
Right.
if you're over on this side of town, you get it.
When does this have to be done?
It can basically start with the state. It's my understanding from the engineer, the state's pretty much ready to go end of December, early January, which tells me late January, because everybody's going to disappear for the holidays, of course, at the state, rightfully so. So I would imagine it can be ready early January. However, the issue will be kind of the PSC process and getting the rates in place can take a while. So that's kind of an ongoing item that we're working with village staff to get that rate case application in and then move forward. But essentially it's going to be once the rates are ready to go and the state's comfortable that the rates are ready, they would be able to close on the loan. So in truth, I would imagine that's probably going to be March for the state. The ineligible portion, though, we don't need to wait for the state. And in truth, you don't need to wait for the rates because it's such a small portion. It's actually not proving that it's absolutely necessary at this time. You know, if your project was only 800,000, you wouldn't have this rate adjustment, is the point there. So the ineligible portion can now kind of be tackled now that our costs are known. So the state just released their kind of initial funding list and kind of confirmed that this ineligible portion will not be funded. So that was kind of the reason for the insight as to starting this conversation and getting to the execution time of finding a source for funding for the ineligible portion.
So we need to borrow this $800,000, and these are our two best options to keep it as lowest cost to the
Correct.
village as possible.
Correct.
And it would be the bond or the negotiated.
Correct. Yep. Amongst other options, but that likely have higher costs.
They
Yep.
would have higher costs, so that's why these are the two that would be
Correct. Yep. So and you can't, like, when you say need to borrow for it, I should add, like, you don't have the cash in the water utility to just pay this outright, so. Yep. So,
You want to continue on here, Brian? Or is there anything else you want to?
yeah, we can kind of, I don't know if you want to talk about, you know, where you'd like to have us start to explore, or actually, you know, tell the underwriter for the R-band to just lock in the rate at this point. You know, we can talk about that at the end or right now. I would just say it's probably worth just doing that, even if you drop it later. There's no financial commitment to pay like $1,000 or anything like that to lock in. So I would at least, that would be my recommendation. You can make that motion now or later, but that's kind of the end of the ineligible portion discussion.
I'll make a motion to ask Ayers to continue to investigate the R-band portion and to lock in the
Rate for the ineligible
for
portion.
the ineligible portion
Yeah.
of
Okay.
I'll second.
Further discussion? This is money, but it's not, we're not really talking budget here, are we? We need a roll call on this?
There will be costs associated.
All right, okay. Roll call, please.
But hold on, but right now, are we actually committing to do one of these at this point?
No, it's just kind of to move forward, like green lighting, getting the locked in quote. Yeah.
Yeah, so,
There's really no money
Other than
right now.
we'll pay your firm $15,000. Pull it off?
Not yet, no, it's
Not
kind of, yeah, because
Once-
if this falls through for whatever reason, you know, we'd navigate to something else. So we haven't sent you a, you know, in truth, a disclosure for certain financing, and won't do so until we're setting the sale. And that point, that would be the financial cost motion.
So you'll come back and make
Yeah,
that
yeah.
presentation?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. All right, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so we're going to go ahead with the R-band quote. 5.41.
The remainder of the presentation is about breaking up this increase, and I have all of the tables in it, only to say if we want to kind of dive in to the weeds on the previous discussion. But if you recall, you're subject to regulation. The PSC rate adjustment right now is in the range of 77%. We have the option, however, due to the eligibility that I spoke to jump through going for an 8% right now, due to what's called their simplified rate case process. So the village is currently eligible. That eligibility started on 10/1, I believe, of 2023. And so you could move forward with going with a 8%. That would be implemented 1/1/24. I believe the Utility Commission moved it forward, that recommendation to the board to do so. So I can dive into these numbers as necessary. However, the second portion of this is literally only, do we want to do the 8% 1/124 adjustment to break up the increase of what at the end will be in cumulative like 70.
Are you serious?
So at the end of the when, the end of 24.
Our water rates are increasing that much?
So the minimum monthly utility bill, if I'm understanding correctly, is going to be 83, 84?
Correct. So later on, there's a slide that says water impact on average residential bill.
So it's going up almost $36.47.
Right.
77%.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't think that's fair to the fixed income people.
Is this news?
I said it before.
Right?
Yeah, we've basically since last December, and then a few meetings to the board,
Not
and then
on
a
the
few
board, but-
and then a
but it
few
seems like-
meetings.
I remember hearing about that. I don't remember a 77% increase. I think that would,
I think that's,
maybe
I
that was
remember
not
it because Mark's hair went on fire.
Yeah,
As soon as you
that's-
said
I did think that before, and I still think
I
it's,
can't afford to lose any more, so we'll be using this water to put on my head. And again, we're gonna have the highest water rates.
Yeah, but we talked about the fact that other municipalities are also going to be in the same boat as us soon because they're
Yeah.
referring maintenance that we are not.
we're a very small community of, what, 1,600 and some people, and you're gonna up their rate over $36? There's a lot of people here that are
We're the they,
retired.
though, that you're talking about.
Say again?
We're the they that you're talking about.
Yeah,
it's us too.
I understand that. There are a lot of retired people here. I don't think it's fair.
Yes, one thing to clarify though, PSC is going to tell us what our rates are.
Right.
We
But-
can't, we don't determine the rates.
But it's right here. You're saying it's actually gonna go up 77%. So PSC really isn't gonna say much of anything about that. Kind of what I'm hearing.
No, PSC is the one that will be telling us overall it's going up 77% to cover the cost of the loans that we had to take to do this project. We didn't decide we should raise rates 77%. It's
We're
based
doing
on the loan
incremental.
amounts and what the PSC is going to dictate it's an estimate that's what they're gonna.
Well, I understand it's an estimate, Ben, it's an estimate that's that's gonna hit hard on a lot of people.
Yeah.
I thought we had another loan that was gonna be satisfied about the same time this loan came due.
We have our gap loan, and that's the financing that we said we just,
The what loan?
No.
Or-
Say that again?
I thought we took out another loan, and this is, I'm remembering from when I was on the village board before. I thought that we had another loan specifically for the water utility. I don't know if it was well number 2 or if it was for something else, and I thought that the timing of that, when that loan was done, would be about the time we'd have to take this loan out for here. So that's not helping us at all?
If you look on the water projection slide, about halfway down, that'll show your existing debt P&I. That's your existing principal. Your true fall off for debt kind of starts in 2030, which is 20,000, but then the big fall off is 2032. And just note the 5 million shown is because of the interim financing, and that's just an exchange of money.
That 9-year frame goes down $90,000.
Yeah, in 2032 it does.
How much added debt does this project add?
About
Not debt, but monthly, annual payment.
450,000.
So we're gonna gain 100, or we're gonna gain 450.
Yeah.
We're gonna lose over 9 years, 90.
Yep.
So it doesn't come close to paying for it.
The other fact is, I believe, we're pretty significantly into the project. Yeah.
It's not like we have a choice.
No.
So how has this been communicated to residents so far? That's not
It's gonna
good, is
show
it?
up on their bill.
Great.
Your office is gonna have a lot of phone calls.
No.
I'm on-
There will be a process during the
Yep.
PSC
Should be
hearings where there's
communicating that
public hearings
long
and so
before now.
forth, and
Letting people know this is coming and why? I mean, I just can't believe we wouldn't have been communicating this, to be honest with you. And we're still not communicating. I mean, not, I'm talking about the board, not you guys.
One thing I would recommend, and this is pretty typical, is knowing once you have the application complete, because you are regulated, people can't unsee numbers. Of course, that can be communicated in terms of estimates. And I know specifically at the utility commission level, I mean, it's been over a year of presentations, to which at one point it was 98%. So we're gonna, 77 is what it's gone down to now. But I think just being in the regulated environment, it can be hard to communicate that, where if it was the sewer utility, it would be much easier because we control what we can do financially in terms of raising the rate revenues. So that would be one item. The other unfortunate item is how the PSC looks at this. And we have an argument to be made to try to further lower this as a result of the potential tax increment from tax increment districts 5 and 6 that have allocable costs that can go towards this project. But the PSC doesn't view it that way. They view that you should still have rates pay for those finance portions of assets. We can talk about it all day of how much I disagree with that. That's what I spend 80% of my 16-hour workday talking about. But it's just the fact of I don't want to show something lower if I know in my experience the PSC won't argue that down. So again, there's mobility here, and that's the struggle in the regulated environment of trying to communicate that with your customers. The even sadder fact is that if we were to just follow statute, the PSC would not require you to issue a customer notice until the public hearing is finalized in terms of that date. And that's, I mean, probably, 5 months from now? Where now we're getting to the point of where we're going to be ready to file the application in a month or two. And that's when we recommend as a firm to go above the statute to say, this is what we put into the PSC as a result of the Well 3 project, and this is what we firmly believe the adjustment will be, a chart like the average residential bill kind of showing that. But that's the struggle of, right, that full communication outside of the fact that we have held, in my recollection, it's 6 public meetings to discuss this as the project was developing. So
This chart that you have is predicated upon a 20-year repayment?
the 450, I believe so. The 450,000.
Okay. Did you get anywhere in looking at 30-year money out there so that we pay it off over 30 years?
Right, that's what the state is going through that approval process now, so I believe we can do potentially that 30-year. It's kind of all dependent on their agreeability to it, though.
And when will you know?
They unfortunately kind of don't finalize that till closer to closing on the loan. So that's typically six weeks is when they'll commit before closing.
Okay.
So that's probably likely coming closer to January.
So I'm not sure I followed, because I didn't follow the 450,000.
Well,
But the 77% increase estimate is based on a 20-year term?
It's actually based off of what the PSC is going to push you to do. And that has nothing to do with the term, unfortunately. So the PSC, I mean, I can explain it on the historical rate performance slide, excuse me.
Yeah.
So there's kind of two ways to look at what should our water rates be or what should our utility rates be. In the rate-making world, in terms of acceptable practices, one way to look at it is on a cash basis, which makes a lot of sense. You take your cash costs of the system, day-to-day expenses in terms of O&M, debt, and what we call cash-funded capital, or those annual expenses for equipment and other items, and just kind of general cash flow recommendations. You net out your other revenues, and then that will show you your revenue requirement or revenue need, and then you weigh that against what your rate revenues currently are and say, all right, here's our inadequacy on a cash basis. However, the PSC has a regulated approach that is based off of what's called the utility basis. That is the bottom half of this chart. They say your rates need to recover O&M expenses, so the same day-to-day operations costs, your depreciation, and then what they call a rate of return on your net investment rate base. So outside of your day-to-day costs and your depreciation costs, which is a formula to say what is the annual replacement value of our system, they say on the undepreciated value of your system, which is net investment rate base, or NIRB, as I indicate in this slide, that undepreciated value, all utilities need to earn a certain percent that we set. We meaning the Public Service Commission. So that's how you get the dollars. You apply that percentage to your undepreciated value of the system. Annually, you should be collecting that amount. That's what the PSC kind of indicates. So here, what's essentially happening is as you add a project and not considering the debt component, given where their rate of return is, you're kind of set at the time that you go in for the rates to do it. However, you can't go in early because they'll say your assets aren't being added at that time. And you can't go in late because then you can't close on your loan. So you have to go in an appropriate at an appropriate time, and then you have to play by their rules of rate setting. And so as you can see the two differences, I would add obviously a little bit more to the debt service as shown in 2024, because that doesn't include your full payment. Right now that's only partial payment in terms of interest on this loan, but add about another $250,000, and you're probably short somewhere in the neighborhood of $60,000 on a cash basis. But PSC initial argument is going to be 93%. In my conversations with them to date, I think I can get down to 77%. I would hope to argue that down further. I just can't guarantee that because I'm not the decision maker.
If we were to raise rates this year 8%,
Yep.
then would you argue it down to 69?
The cumulative is going to be the same, correct? So the final, the next one would be 69%.
So whatever
Yep.
if we raise by the highest amount we can this year, it's just going to help us
Yes.
have a lower
Final
next
adjustment. Yep.
final adjustment.
Yep. Regardless of their decision.
Incrementation we should have been doing.
Yeah, we should have been doing this all along. I talked about that when I was on the water too.
Part of the issue too is actually you've done two, a 3 and a 4.5%. The issue is the PSC sets that rate as well, and inflation apparently didn't hit Madison until this year, which is an 8%. And I say that facetiously, but I say that to PSC staff to their face as well. But they, it's the simplified is too little. There's needs to be another window of opportunity for large projects. Believe me, we're involved in a lot of these. I just had a colleague who had to go present a 211% increase. And that's through 3 years of arguments with the PSC trying to plan for this project, and the PSC just said no. So they're finally deciding to have to go in for that, but it's unfortunate that it's like, well, can't we go in and ask for a portion of this or some sort of difference? And the answer's been no. So I urge you to understand the regulated environment to which the water utilities in the state operate. As much as you can inflict change, go there. But right now, these are the facts, that the village utility is facing.
But if we were able to get the 30-year money, the PSC is going to look at that, hopefully, and allow us then to drop these rates because we're paying it off, we've got a third more time, correct?
Incorrect. They don't look at debt service as a primary reason for rates to change. They look at it at depreciation instead, and your rate of return on your net investment rate base, which is in rate making practice is supposed to cover debt. So you're supposed to kind of look at it both ways. I'll just provide an example. In a different community that I worked in, we had 3 meetings with the PSC to argue a lower rate of return because this community actually has top 10 cash in the state in terms of water utility. And I said, they right there have a rate stabilization fund to handle volatility within their O&M expenditures. And the argument got so far as to go, can we just go for a 0.5% lower rate of return, which would result in a 1% rate impact reduction, lowering their actual rate adjustment 1%. The answer from the PSC was no. So they don't look at it on a cash basis in truth.
So if we had all the money to pay cash for this,
They would still look at the rates the same way.
it wouldn't matter.
Right.
They would still.
Regardless of how, whenever you would go into the, right, so in that case, what we would recommend if you had all that cash is to just kind of do the simplifieds. Their total, that community's total adjustment was 13%, so they were obviously like, at the end of the day, they're like, this isn't worth a battle, because I told them you can go into a contested rate case that's going to involve more hourly work on our end to go to Madison, make our statements, etc. But they kind of weighed that and just said, whatever, we'll take the extra 1%, although it's ridiculous. But given the small rate adjustment, I think that made that decision quite easy. As the rate adjustments get larger, you start to pick your battles and be a little, more stronger-willed there. But it should provide insight as to how the PSC looks at it, and quite frankly, kind of robotically, in terms of their methodology.
So you said the first pass from the commission was 96% increase, but you felt
93.
But you're feeling, as you can talk about the 77, you had pretty good luck at that.
Yeah. The one other factor I think that's most important to them is the one where you'd compare yourselves to other utilities and just seeing how expensive it would be. And when it's cases that involve going to be the most expensive regionally, they'll start to have more consideration there.
We're already one of
Correct.
the most expensive.
Correct, yeah.
And then with this, we will
We
be.
will be.
Not the number one I would like.
So someone said others are going to be going up more than we are. Is that true, or why did that statement get made? What?
We were told that at the time that other communities are going to be doing larger projects as well. So.
One factor to consider there is when you look at the rate comparison, and why we keep this in the table, is the effective date of each of those rates. And so if you've seen a community that's not done that rate adjustment for some time, typically, right, everybody's hit with projects at some point in time. So that's that thought process. I don't know if Trustee Whitter's comments are, from MSA, the engineer, but my commentary on that would be more to point towards just kind of the effective date, and the fact being that, the rates will need to be kind of adjusted for most communities at some point. The other
But ours is going up a lot because it's a
major project, right?
Particularly compared to the size of it.
Correct, yep. It's basically project costs against number of customers served.
Oregon, who's one of the lowest ones, hasn't been updated since 11.
But they might not need to be either.
We just finished their rate case and they did jump up, so.
So they're going to be above us?
No.
Didn't think so. You know, do you have any opinion? Why is our rate so much higher than everybody else's? What are we doing that causes us to be so high?
I think that involves more like an engineer's perspective and truth. From my perspective and experience, I would imagine that's kind of treatment and facility need versus customer served. I struggle with the rate comparison solely by region because a fine example of this is there's communities in Racine and Kenosha County that have a huge radium issue and the neighbors 5 miles away do not from their water sourcing. And so for one community I was involved in their treatment plant upgrade was like $10 million in 2018 or something like that. And that was their rate base at the time was like $2 million, but it was because of the radium in their water source that needed to be treated and removed because they've usurped their limits that were allowed. So theirs, it was impossible to find like what's a true metric there. We can't do regional because everybody on this half of the county doesn't deal with that, but you can only really grab the communities that do. And so even from a similar water source that doesn't have that treatment issue, the rates weren't fair in terms of comparison. So I would say that probably requires, kind of an engineer's perspective to speak to different components of your system. Another example that I have of that is communities in the La Crosse area that are, partially on the bluffs that need pumpage to go way up versus a community that's in the valley that doesn't need that pumpage. Their operating expenses are much higher. So regionally, it doesn't speak to truth in terms of an apples to apples comparison.
Just be nice if we had that explanation. Start talking to customers why their rates are so high.
And for us, is it because we soften our water? That's one of the reasons why our rates are higher? Are there other areas? I'm kind of looking at you, Todd. Do you know?
I would assume that would probably be some of the reason why the expenses are higher. But there is a benefit to softening your water too.
Oh no. Because it makes our equipment last longer.
The plumbing throughout the whole village.
Yeah.
There is a bonus to it.
I love not having a water softener in my house. I love that.
Well, and that's an expense that you don't have.
Yep, that is an expense I don't have.
There's also the historical aspect of it where we had opportunities in the past to bump up the rates and we decided not to do that. So we're also dealing with that as well.
But he's telling you that doesn't matter.
It does. It's more the ability to with the PSC is limited was my point. Sometimes when it's a large project, there's just no window of opportunity that provides the necessary ramp up to get to this. It just kind of hits when it hits. Yeah. But there is a component, to say, looking at the historical slide, that there were additional opportunities outside of the what will be three simplifieds, that have completed. So.
I think that's a hard sell though. I mean, we're already one of the highest utilities without it. So to say we didn't raise rates, why he's so high already.
So if you go to the PSC's website, you can look at this data yourself. And if you, like he mentioned, there are some utilities that are way, way higher than what we will be. That's not apples to apples, so.
Yeah.
So today we need to decide if we're going to go for the
Incremental 8%.
incremental 8%.
Simplified.
Now, is that this board's decision or is that the Water and Sewer Board's decision?
Water and Sewer did recommend it.
Okay.
So if this board supports that, then
When would that be effective?
January.
1st of January, yep.
I don't see how we can't do it because, I mean, I get it's a big increase, but whatever, I mean, to ease people, it's the most we can do to help ease people into it.
Or would they just gonna be more pissed off because you just raised the rates? Because when the 70% comes in, or 77, when would that be? The end of the year?
likely sometime mid-year.
So 6 months later, then you're gonna raise it another 70%?
Well,
I don't see how that's gonna appease people.
We're not. It's not going to.
You just raised it 6 months ago. What the hell are you raising it 70% now?
I know, because every family in Cambridge, just according to this schedule, this one right here,
Yeah.
every single family is going to be paying $435
Yeah.
a year more.
And having an 8% now doesn't change that. Still $407 more.
And as I said before, there's a lot of retirees here that are on fixed income. It's seriously gonna bite them in the backside. I understand where you guys are coming from, but my focus is about the retirees too.
And part of the discussion was 20 years ago, this well was talked about being redone at a cost of $1 million. And previous boards have put off until DNR said, you have to do the well now. So we had no choice to move forward with the well. It could have been done 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago at a much lower cost. And we wouldn't be looking at this today, but
It's the price of service.
we had no choice. The DNR said this will be done now.
Well, the other item here, and we're not talking personnel, but I feel that Vicky is going to get the brunt of this. I mean, she is just going to get slammed with phone calls when people see this, whether it's in January or it's in June.
And like Brian said, we will, once we know for sure, we will be doing communication and,
It's still gonna be a
but they're
sticker
still gonna
shock.
call. They're still going to call.
Absolutely.
But, yeah.
I don't know, and I'm different than you. Because I would say if you knew this big increase was coming, why throw it all on me at once? Why didn't you ease me? Why didn't you incrementally give me increases instead of now suddenly I have to figure out in my budget how I'm going to pay for this much
It's
more?
only 6 months different. You're not really giving them much of a notice.
But I still think I'd be pissed if I didn't have that notice.
I think
You're
pissed
doing
no
an
matter what.
8%,
Well-
you're doing an 8% at the beginning of the year, and then you're doing
80,
supposedly
70%,
77
Or 70, it would be 70 then.
whatever.
in whatever, so you're looking at, 78%, almost 80% increase in less than a year.
The other factor that I would just put on the table is it does show if you do the 8%, it shows the PSC that you've now done 3 in a row and you've tried to break it up as much as possible. In my experience, we can't go to them with the argument of we need a lower rate of return and we can still cash flow this utility, or why can't we break this up more if we're not going in for those windows of opportunity that we have. That's an unfortunate circumstance, I agree, but it is a factor. It's regulation, but it's also people that are making this final decision. So in my experience, they've looked at that more favorably when those simplifieds have been consistent, and doing this final one is more or less goodwill of trying to break up that increase, basically proving to the PSC. We've known about this project since 2020 or 19, whatever it was, but started the simplifieds, I believe, in 21, if I recall, or maybe even 19, I think it's 21. But we started this once we knew it. Now we know our final project costs, so now this is the time, and we're doing the project. Now it's the time to go in for a rate case. We're playing by your rules, but we've also done our best job to break this up. So that's the only other item that I would kind of factor in here, is where I see the value in doing the 8% outside of, I do see value in the sticker shock is still the same sticker shock. It's just broken up. $36 on an average bill is $36, whether it's now and in the future. But I still think it provides kind of that ability to break it up only under the rules in which we play.
God, I hope none of you, it's gonna sound really ridiculous, but everybody here better be here in April when we're having an election. Because if we do what you're suggesting, 8% isn't too much. I want the entire board to be here to help Vicki answering questions. And that we don't just, well, I'll get to April and I won't run for re-election.
Oh, come on.
I'm with you know, my co-trustee, Tim. I think there are people in this community that this is gonna be a big bite.
They
I
could
don't,
go- they
I
could
don't
go
think
on-
anyone disagrees with that. No one disagrees with that.
But here's the thing that I see as an issue. You could go on vacation for a month or do your snowbird thing for 4 or 5 months, use 0 water, and you're still getting a bill. You're still getting a bill for using 0 water. That's not fair.
We do that now.
That's PSC too, the base rates are set
Still have
in
pipes,
our.
you still have pipes hooked to your house, though.
But you're not running any water. You're not in the
Still-
house.
Still a cost of having
The-
a
What's the cost of using water that you're not there? You're not using water.
Same
You're still being billed.
Yep.
That's wrong.
But
It's kind of like electricity.
out of our control though.
I understand that, but this is why it's wrong by PSC's portion. If you're not there to use it, why are you being billed for it?
An argument you're gonna have to take up with the PSC.
Yeah, and we can look at that. So part of, obviously, our expertise and experience is requesting different rate structures. So at the point that we have the application all completed, we can show you some, you know, if we wanted to lower the fixed charge or some, or, you know, design the rate block differently to target fixed income individuals, we can certainly do that. The one thing that I'll just say is, another anecdote is in a much larger community, right? So the variance is going to be much larger, but definitely a larger population that is in the lower income class. Going through that exploration of how many people actually get out of this rate block versus don't get out of this rate block. If we have a cheaper rate block for the first 2,000 gallons per month or something like that, it actually didn't provide any benefit and was punitive to revenue, you know, to those. So it just proved that even the, you know, the single individual households who would likely be on the lower household income side were still impacted by the rates regardless of the rate structure. I'm not saying that's the case for Cambridge, which we can investigate once we get the application complete, but that would just be another consideration, is just know these can be adjusted in terms of volume versus fixed, but it should be done in like an investigative matter, not just, I would only like to pay $10 a month on a fixed basis, because now we're talking about revenue volatility that exposes further risk for the financial standing of the utility, and then would further pressure having to do this fund process with the PSC again.
So what you're asking us tonight is to look at this, and one of the options is to go 8% at the beginning of the year.
Yep.
And then middle of the year, once this thing is done, there'll be another jump, and it will go up 70% or 69, all right? And we have to make that decision. You're also going to continue to see if you can't get us 30-year funding with the state of Wisconsin. I'll talk with you off to the side, because I still feel like that should have some relevance with the PSC.
It doesn't, Mark. It just doesn't. That isn't how they calculate
I'm not
it.
kidding.
It just doesn't.
It's
If
not.
if we paid cash for the $5 million and didn't take out a loan at all, we would still be looking at this increase because of the way they calculate it.
It wouldn't be a 77% increase.
Yes, it would.
No.
You would be, the truth there would be you'd get a longer window for your simplifieds, right? Because you wouldn't need it, because you wouldn't have debt outstanding. But there, you only, the other fund rule of the PSC is based off of how many customers you serve. You only get 40% cumulative of simplifieds until they force you to do the rate case. So to your point, eventually you would be forced to eat that full adjustment plus the accumulation of assets during that time. So it's just their methodology is not correct in instances when it's a large project and a low amount of customers served.
Chris?
Is 8% the highest we can increase it at this time?
Currently, yes.
Okay.
They do that, they annually update that every February 15th. They come out with a public order that says what the simplified adjustment is and what the rate of return is to determine your eligibility. Right now, you're eligible, and it would be 8%.
So if we had more volume of water, more customers.
That would help. So that is
have
one
we ever looked into
consideration that
trying to
will.
sell water to other municipalities or anything so we can lower our costs? You know, I mean, we have all the other shared services. I don't know if other municipalities have water issues. And
Well,
Oakland uses wells.
Sewer is,
I know.
it's the other half of this, but that's out in Rockdale. and
No, I know.
They're
but
looking at
maybe
that.
Deerfield or I don't know where they
They
need.
have their own water
They have their
utility.
own water.
I'm just throwing out, you know, it's the only way you're going to lower the rates is to increase volume.
More rooftops.
Or what?
More rooftops. More people.
Yeah, but that's slow. Just, you know, if we could find one big customer, it would really make a dent in the rates. But
We really don't have any place to expand. We're locked into
well, I'm
our
saying a
little
different
circle.
municipality.
I understand, but what are you saying about rooftops? We're kind of
Yeah.
stuck.
Well, it's going to take years anyway.
Yeah. Well, does anybody want to make a motion here for the 8%?
I'll make a motion to make an adjustment of an increase of 8% to take place on 1/1/24.
I'll second.
Okay. Further discussion? This, again, this fly is
I
bugging
guess
everybody.
I'd clarify the motion through a simplified rate case.
Through simplified rate case.
All right. We don't need a
Just
roll
ask
call.
when we announce the 8% that we let them know that there's another increase coming that's going to be
70%.
substantial in 6 months. And not
We
keep our
can
mouth shut
do,
about that.
Can do
What?
town hall.
we can do notices that, yeah, this is a simplified rate, full rate case
And we can't
is
share the
pending
fact it's going to
before
go up a bunch in
the
6 more
PSC.
months.
No, that's what she just said.
Oh,
She was finishing her sentence.
all right.
Just, she can't tell them what, because we don't know
No,
what
I
it is,
know,
because we
but-
haven't submitted.
Okay.
We know there's gonna be substantial.
All right, we have a motion and we have a second. We don't need to have roll call on this, do we?
No.
Okay. All right, you know what we're up against. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I abstain. I abstain.
You abstain, okay. All right. Brian, you're just a fountain, pardon the pun, of good information here, but we knew this was gonna happen. I mean, it's not your fault, so.
Yeah, the other thing I'll say is we'll be here if you have ideas about preferred methods of communication, you know, you can funnel that through village staff. Again, we'll be back when the application is complete to come before the board to show you what the application is and then have a motion to file that application with the PSC. So we don't just file it and move forward. So just know we'll be back. Other communities have done public information sessions at that time, or you can, you know, send out communications as you desire beyond that. But I would highly recommend understanding what the application is as a part of that, so that can be a helpful component. So it's not estimates based off of our model, it's more or less the PSC's actual thing, which obviously our model tries to mimic the PSC application as much as possible. So
Okay.
Then my other question, and Lisa, I don't know if you can answer this question, or are there state programs or private that can help people with utility bills like this in the case they can't? So maybe we should start gathering that information to make available to our constituents if they need it?
it's available on the PSC's website, and I can
Okay.
send that I can send the link
Because that
to
might be
staff.
very helpful then as well.
I believe you'd be correct.
Thank you for coming by, giving us this information. Brian, can I get a business card from you with your contact information?
Sure.
I think I have
Let me
it.
grab that.
All right. Okay, Artie, thank you.
Thank you, drive safely.
All right, we're going to move on to item 9A, Fire Commission update. Chris?
We elected Dave Schrader as the president pro tem. We approved minutes from the last 3 meetings. The budget update, we talked about line items for legal and mediation fees. Motion was passed to establish a commission website. We approved future meetings, one for November 15th and December 20th. We went into closed session to discuss response to the Village of Cambridge mediation request. I asked for a signed copy of the Lake Mills contract. I have not received that yet. I asked for a copy of the EMS director's job description. I just received that right before the meeting started. And I plan on, again, requesting public comment and a line item for the next agendas, and also a line item for paying the bills on future meeting agendas. And then, last but not least, I invited our Treasurer Secretary, Sheila Palenkas, if we have any financial questions.
Okay.
So the current
There was a
president
lot said
resigned?
in that. whole
No,
thing.
he's on a medical leave. Mark Cook from
Yeah,
Christian.
So,
All right, questions?
So you said the new president of the fire commission is,
well, he's the pro tem, while
Pro
Mark
tem.
Cook, he has some medical issues right now, so we have a president pro tem, Dave Schrader, our
Gotcha.
Lake Mills representative.
okay. And you said something about the job description. Are they stonewalling you?
I think it's just a matter of, you know, they did give us the job descriptions, I just got them right before the meeting started, so.
So you went into closed session to discuss the letter we sent requesting
That's
mediation?
correct.
Was there any official open session answer to that?
No.
But we got the letter.
Did you see the letter?
No, I didn't see that.
Oh, yeah. They suggested a mediator.
Okay.
One thing I will add, we'll talk about it at Audit and Finance Thursday. Per the IGA, the agreement, or the communities are supposed to approve the budget or vote on the budget for the EMS commission. In the past, this village board has never had a line item on a village board agenda to discuss that. It's always just been approved through passage of the budget. So we were talking that at the next village board meeting, we may have the fire and EMS commission budget as a line item on the village board agenda to share concerns, questions we may have, and do we support the budget as presented, or so that will be on the next village board agenda.
And that's gonna be at the next meeting?
Yeah. Which is November 14th.
Sheila, do you feel like you're getting a handle on any of the financials related to the EMS commissions?
I think that the new board members on the commission, that's a big help. We're getting a lot of pushback right now. The bills should be signed, or the checks should be signed by the president and the treasurer. They are not yet being signed by the president and the
Isn't that part of the IGA?
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, so why would there be a lot of pushback on it when it's part of the IGA? Just a question.
Yeah, well, I think some of the conflict comes in how the, how it's been operated for quite some time. It's also, probably some conflict in how job descriptions interpreted for the director/chief position. And how that person reports to or that person reports to, whether it's the entire commission or the president of fire commission. These are things that need to be discussed and worked out. And at this point, despite my request to have the checkbook sent back up here from Ohio, so that the checks can be processed and we can begin using the interim bookkeeper, who, by the way, does now have errors and omissions insurance. We don't have what we need to get the financial reports done, and we aren't meeting the requirements of the IGA in terms of signing checks. So that's a problem.
Is there a desire, do you feel there is a desire on the current board to support you in being able to fulfill your role as the treasurer?
I believe that there are at least 2 individuals who support that. And there's a third individual that I believe would support that.
Okay. What do you think, Chris?
I think it's it's a old guard versus new guard situation. So the new guard coming in is looking at this just as what's in the IGA. What's the IGA say? And that's what we need to go off of. There's been instances in the past where duties and responsibilities fell on the EM, like Mr. Saloff, fell on him to do. And it's kind of been like pulling teeth from my perspective of being able to pull those responsibilities away from the individual that's been doing it for so long. So that's the tug of war that we're playing right now. And we need the commission to come together as a whole to demand that we go off the IGA and everything that we do.
Just because it's been done wrong in the past,
Yeah.
doesn't mean it should continue to be done wrong, now that we've recognized that.
I agree.
And I've sent an email to the acting president citing the various sections of the IGA, not only for the treasurer, but also the president's responsibilities, and asked that, for the third time, that the checkbook be brought back to Wisconsin, and that we immediately begin signing checks according to the IGA. I have not received a response to that.
Kind of sounds like dereliction of duty then, on the president's part, to make that happen for you.
So hopefully the pro tem can get more leeway than the president has been able to.
The email that I just sent was to the pro tem.
Right.
Because the letter that my efforts to work with the individual who's taking care of those responsibilities for the most part has told me that according to the president, things are going to stay the way they are for now.
And he doesn't feel like he needs to give Sheila anything unless she goes through the president. So there's an issue there.
So is the board pushing back on the president then?
Well, now we have a pro tem, so now it's a matter.
So let's see if
right.
the pro tem acts, and if it doesn't, then, okay. All right.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate your efforts.
Got a question?
Okay. The individual that is responsible for doing most of these things at the moment, or has been, have they read the IGA?
I'm sure that they have. But you see, we have a bit of a difficult situation in that there is a job description that was written outside outside the fire commission as a whole. There is a contract that was written, I believe, outside the fire commission as a whole. And that individual may be working in good faith according to what he understands to be his job.
I understand, and I'm not,
Yeah.
it's not against you.
Yeah. No,
If it were me in that position and I was gonna take on a high-profile role as that person would, I would wanna make sure I'd read that IGA, because that governs it, no matter what the contract says. That's my input.
Okay.
I think it's incumbent upon us to see this through as quickly as we can.
All right.
What we're working on.
Go ahead, Janet.
So how did it happen that a job description and a contract got written outside of the commission as a whole to begin with? I don't know that we can even answer
I
that.
can't answer that.
Sounds to me like that has to be addressed first.
Well,
Okay.
these are
Yeah,
these
this
are
is
things
really,
that,
you're getting into the fire and EMS commission, you know.
no, but these are things, Jenna, that this board has been asking questions on, and that would probably be one of the items that we've raised to the commission, or would as we continue to pursue mediation and other questions of how the EMS commission has been, the fire and EMS commission has been operating. We have concerns, and that's one of them.
And just, we will be reviewing the job descriptions now.
Okay.
I have just
All
one
right.
additional question.
All right, this is the last one because I,
Okay, so as far as the budget, I know we're gonna have that on our next agenda as a line item. Does the fire commission, did they put together the whole budget? So like you, Chris, they put together all of those numbers?
We had, as I understand it, would be probably the first, working committee, of the whole that people have seen in a very long time, if ever, is what I was told. So there's a limited amount, but there was progress in that sense, that we sat down together, to spend a couple hours, reviewing the budget. But, it has work, we have work to do.
Okay. The only reason I ask is so when we have this on our agenda for next month, there's gonna be lots of questions that are asked about certain line items on that budget. Are we gonna be able to ask them? Are you going to know? Or is there somebody else that needs to maybe be a part of that discussion to help answer those questions, or?
It couldn't hurt to have, the fire chief and the EMS chief, and, I'll be there, if you want me there.
I mean,
I
if they
don't
were
know
part
as
of the,
much as anybody can know it.
right, I mean, if they were part of the process of putting all the numbers together, I would think that would be beneficial to have the chief and the director here.
Yeah, I mean, of course it would, because there are line items, obviously. And there were a lot of good questions at the meeting, on the 21st, I felt, but, that's not the meeting of the municipalities. So
Correct.
it makes sense to do that.
Okay.
And
Maybe we could do that, invite them both. Okay, that's all.
okay. All right,
Rather than
thank
doing
you.
that with 5 or 6 municipalities, would it make sense for the commission to schedule something with all the municipalities, so you can just do it all at one time? Versus hitting each one separately?
I hadn't thought about it, but that's certainly something that
I think all the municipalities would want to
In the
understand.
future, some municipalities have already passed their budgets. this year.
Great idea. Uh-huh.
Once
But yeah, that's an interesting idea. I would like to talk about that. I think that that's a very good idea. I think the more that we can have working meetings like that to discuss these things, the better off we'll all be. They're, in my opinion, they're, the overall budget is the commission's ultimate responsibility, and they should have intimate knowledge of all of it. But of course, that is with input and with individual line items as it relates to fire and EMS. Where that input, gets even more defined. But ultimately, the fire commission should know every line of that as well, and be responsible for doing anything.
Okay, thank you, everybody, for your comments
you.
and, giving us some ideas on how to proceed. Okay, let's move on. Item 10, correspondence. Don't really see anything here, Lisa?
Nope.
Okay, moving on to questions, referrals of staff, future agenda items, dancing goat and sampling, and then we'll also have the comprehensive plan. Anything else anybody have that they want to talk about? Upcoming meetings?
We owe ourselves a pay raise.
What's our status of a website update?
I'm looking into them and getting some pricing details right now. I've got one that's at the top of my list.
I think we need to move that up on
Yes.
priority because we got a lot of information we need to disseminate to the village.
We're going to discuss that at the Audit and Finance Committee meeting, and then we can put it on the next agenda, and I can bring you my recommendations if you'd like.
All right, well, speaking of audit and finance, under upcoming meetings, we have one this Thursday, right? 5:30?
Yes.
All right. And then November 8th, the library board, finance. And then November 13th, Plan Commission, November 14th, Village Board, November 21st, Water and Sewer, and the 28th, the budget, the public hearing. That's going to put us right around Thanksgiving.
After.
Yeah, right
The
down there.
Tuesday after Thanksgiving.
Yeah. And then November 28th, the village board. So,
Email them or something.
okay.
I will make note, Tammy will be doing the meetings the week of November 13th. So the Planning Commission, Village Board, I will be out of the country at that time.
All right. Okay, does anybody want to call the,
Make a motion to adjourn.
all right, second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carries.